Okay. Which ones are green?
Okay. The March 7th, 2016 meeting of the City of Danville Planning Commission is now called to order. Welcome everyone today to this meeting. The Planning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council and is comprised of members who serve on a voluntary basis. Today there are 6 items to consider, which there will be a public hearing for the items, and anyone wishing to speak on for or against the item may do so at that time. After the public hearing, Commissioner members may have questions for staff and for those who have spoken for or against a requested change. Planning Commission will review this case relative to the City Code and make a recommendation to forward to City Council, and Council will consider these items at their April 5th meeting. If we could have the roll call, please.
Mr. Scare?
Here.
Mr. Dotson?
Present.
Mr. Garrison?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Miss Evans? Here. Mr. Bolton?
Here.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a special use permit application, PLSUP 2016-000040, filed by Sean Harding, PE, requesting a special use permit for the installation of an accessory building without a primary building in accordance with Article 3C, Section C, Item 23 of the Code of the City of Danville. The applicant, at 2020 Memorial Drive, the applicant is proposing to install a standalone restroom facility, a floating boat dock, and a fishing platform at Abreu Grogan Park. If we could have a staff report, please.
The applicant, John Harden, is seeking a special use permit for the installation of an accessory building without a primary building. The applicant is proposing to install a standalone restroom facility, a floating boat dock, and a fishing platform at Abreu Grogan Park. Abreu Grogan Park is owned by the City of Danville. It's a 3.06 acre park that runs beside the Dan River with ingress and egress on Memorial Drive. Presently, the site is improved with a boat storage building. Abreu Grogan lies within the floodplain, and the proposed improvements are estimated to increase the 100-year water surface elevation by a maximum of 0.01 feet. As a mitigation strategy, some brush and trees will be cleared and compensatory excavation will be performed. The mitigation strategy should result in no rise in the Dan River 100-year flood elevations. The proposed standalone restroom will be located north of the existing boat storage building. It will not be attached to sewer lines, but will have 2,000-gallon holding tank that will be pumped. The finished floor of the restroom facility will be 1.74 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. The fishing platform is proposed to be located on the riverbank behind the restroom. The floating boat dock will be to the right of the existing boat ramp, and it will serve as an additional canoe launch area. 11 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. Staff recommends approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000041, filed by Sean Harden, to allow for the installation of an accessory building without a primary building in accordance with Article C, Section C, Item 23 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986, as amended at 2020 Memorial Drive.
Okay, thank you. We'll open the public hearing now. If there's anyone wishing to come and speak on this item, they may do so.
Good afternoon. I'm Sean Hart with Dewberry, and I can take any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions from the...
Just curiosity question. Why aren't you going to hook up to the city sewer?
The sewer line is across the sewer line would have to run across the potable water intake for the whole entire city of Danville, and we didn't feel like that would be a wise idea.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else wishing to speak on the item? Okay, being none, I'll close the public hearing. And if we could have a motion or any other discussion. Go ahead.
I'll recommend approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000040 as submitted.
Okay, we have a second? Got a second? Oh, okay.
Okay, and the recommend, are we on 4.1 or 4, okay.
Staff recommends approval of 4-1. We are talking on 4-0.
4-0.
Okay.
4-0 on the other page.
Sorry, we have a typo.
That's a typo.
I second that.
Okay. Got a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, the second item is a request to amend Chapter 41 entitled Zoning Ordinance of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986, as amended, more specifically, Article 15 entitled Definitions, Section B entitled Definitions, to create a definition for indoor shooting facilities, Article 3M entitled HRC, Highway Retail Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item number 26 to allow for indoor shooting facility, Article 3K entitled CBC Central Business District, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item number 28 to allow for car washes, and Article 3J entitled NC Neighborhood Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 20 to allow for urban agriculture. And we'll have the staff report on this, please.
The City of Danville adopted the current zoning regulations in 2004. The regulations are amended from time to time to address changes in laws on both the state and national level, as well as for new ideas or concepts presented to the city. Requests have been filed to amend Chapter 41 entitled Zoning Ordinance of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986 as amended, more specifically Article 15 entitled Definitions, Section B entitled Definitions, to create a definition for indoor shooting facilities, Article 3M entitled HRC Highway Retail Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 26 to allow for indoor shooting facilities, Article 3K entitled CBC Central Business Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 28 to allow for car washes, and Article 3J entitled NC Neighborhood Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 20 to allow for urban agriculture. Staff recommends that Article 15 entitled Definitions, Section B entitled Definitions, be amended by adding the following definition. Article 15, Definitions, Section B Definitions, Indoor Shooting Facility, a facility designed for or used for shooting at targets by archery or with rifles, pistols, or shotguns, and which is completely enclosed within a building, buildings, or structures. It is also recommended that Article 3M entitled HRC, Highway Retail Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, be amended by adding the following. Article 3M, HRC, Highway Retail Commercial, Section C, Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, number 26, Indoor Shooting Facilities. Staff has received a request to amend Article 3K entitled CBC Central Business Commercial, Section C entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 28 to allow for car washes. The property that is the subject of this request is located within the River District and is therefore subject to the River District Design Guidelines. Any exterior changes to the property require approval of the River District Design Commission. Section 4.2 of the River District Design Guidelines, entitled Allowed Uses, states that auto-related businesses are discouraged within the River District. Staff believes that this request should be remanded to the River District Design Commission so that they can make a recommendation on whether the guidelines, as well as the uses in the CBC Central Business District, should be amended to allow for this type of use. Lastly, staff has received a request to amend Article 3J, entitled NC Neighborhood Commercial, Section C, entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 20 to allow for urban agriculture. When urban agriculture was adopted by the City of Danville in 2015, it was placed in residential districts by special use permit. This afforded staff, the Planning Commission, and City Council the opportunity to notify neighboring property owners of the proposal, as well as to generate any conditions necessary to alleviate neighborhood concerns. Staff didn't include this use in commercial districts. Staff has been presented with a case where a church owns property that is zoned commercial, and due to its location, staff believes that the downzoning to residential is not the best course for future development potential. The church would like to use the property, probably for a few years, until it decides what its future plans for the property are. To allow for urban agricultural request without downzoning the property, staff is recommending that urban agriculture be added to Article 3J, entitled NC Neighborhood Commercial, Section C, entitled Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, by adding item 20 to allow for urban agriculture. As recommended, Article 3J, NC Neighborhood Commercial, Section C, Uses Permitted by Special Use Permit, item 20 be added under urban agriculture.
Okay, that's a lot of reading, isn't it?
I practiced.
This item on the agenda is just for code changes. That's all we're voting, is just to bring the code up to where these items can be voted on specifically for applications on specific properties after that. That being said, I'll open the public hearing if there's any comment just on the specific code changes. Anybody wishing to ask any questions or step forward on the code change?
Do you guys have any questions?
Well, this is, I think you will want to come on another item because this is not addressed in your specific use. This is just a general code change. Okay, any questions from the commissioners or anything? Okay, nobody else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. There's no questions or comments?
Can I just ask a little bit about protocol? I mean, I guess we can determine that here, but y'all's recommendation on the River District Design Commission being the first to review this about the car wash, so do you think that kind of thing needs to go to them and be deferred to them before, would that still come back to the Planning Commission afterwards?
Planning has authority to remand it to any group to make a recommendation prior to you making a recommendation. If you would make a recommendation right now, that would be forwarded to City Council prior to them hearing it. That's why I think it's proper for you to, in this case, remand it to them. They can make that determination whether those guidelines should be changed and whether that use is appropriate for the district where the already adopted guidelines say it is not. If they then would recommend that change, we'll bring it back to you and say, you know, they're recommending yes or no on that. You can then forward that on to City Council. If you make the recommendation at this point, they'll never get a chance to say whether it's appropriate or not appropriate. We feel that since they're putting so much effort into renovating the River District, they should have a say on this.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time on this group here, like working to create that River District Commission, if I recall, are those guidelines. So seems to me like we said in there that this would be the more likely procedure in areas that we hadn't clarified.
Correct.
Okay.
We feel that, again, that's why staff's making this record. We feel we had someone ask for something that's not really, doesn't say yes, doesn't truly say no.
Okay.
It says it's not necessarily appropriate. We feel that they should have a chance to review it to make that determination, then bring it back to you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
If we decide to ask the River District Design Commission, can we put a timeline on that? If they just refuse to discuss it and not give a recommendation,
Yes.
and we're asking for one,
Yes, you can ask hear it at their next meeting and make a recommendation back to you. If they fail to make that recommendation, then it will come to you with, a no recommendation from them, and you can then forward it on.
Okay. That being said, you want to make a motion and add anything to it? Go ahead.
I recommend approval of the code amendments as submitted by the planning staff.
Okay.
Okay, do we want to put Q's limits on that?
Well, the motion doesn't have it.
I know, I'm just, before we
You
vote,
want to,
I would like to amend his motion then.
Well, he hasn't had a second yet, so if you suggested to him what needs to be in the motion, then he could continue the motion, and then there would be a second, and he wouldn't have to go.
So I can legally suggest to him now.
You can suggest to him during this discussion. Yes.
Mr. Dodson, I would legally suggest that we put a no more than 1 month time limit on it.
That sounds good to me.
okay, we have a second on that?
second.
Okay. I'll have a roll call, please.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes?
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000041, filed by Phil Strader, requesting a special use permit for the operation of an indoor shooting facility in accordance with Article 3M, Section C, Item 26 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, as amended on parcel ID 59740. The applicant is proposing to operate an indoor shooting range with a training facility and sporting goods retail at this location. Before we have the report, I'm just going to make a comment that I will have to abstain on this because of representing the landowners. So I'm going to read this for the record. I, Michael Scares, do have to state that I have a conflict of interest regarding the consideration of of recommending a special use permit for the operation of an indoor shooting facility at parcel ID number 59740, listed on the agenda as item 3. Therefore, pursuant to the State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act, Virginia Code 2.2-3112, I must abstain from voting on this agenda item. So we could have the staff report, and then the vice chair will take it over.
The applicant, Phil Strader, is seeking a special use permit for the operation of an indoor shooting facility on parcel ID number 59740 at the intersection of Riverside Drive and Camelot Court. The applicant is proposing to construct an advanced indoor shooting range, sporting goods retail establishment, and training facility. The applicant is proposing to develop an indoor shooting range that will front Riverside Drive. The ingress and egress will be of the 2.11 acre property is Camelot Court. The subject property is zoned HRC, Highway Retail Commercial, and presently there are no improvements or structures on the property. Per section 40-3 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Danville, all ranges must be in compliance with safety regulations and must be approved by the Chief of Police. Indoor firing ranges must be designed to contain all bullets within its walls, ceilings, and floors, and must be properly ventilated. The proposed range will consist of two 25-yard ranges that each have 8 lanes. It will also have an observation room, a club room, and a classroom. There will be 47 parking spaces provided. 17 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. Staff recommends approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000041 filed by Phil Strader to allow for an indoor shooting facility in accordance with Article 3M, Section C, Item 26 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986, as amended on parcel ID number 59740.
Okay, we're going to open for the public hearing now, and anybody wants to speak to this can come to the mic, state your name, and make your comments.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear me okay? I'm Phil Strader, and I welcome any questions. If the council would, or the commission would like to learn a little bit more about myself, I'm happy to oblige. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Question here. Will the building be soundproof?
In a matter of speaking, yes. It will. Construction of an indoor shooting range requires a number of regulations, federal regulations, EPA regulations, OSHA regulations, all of which have a sound mitigation requirement from the outside of the building. The way I will be constructing this will be similar to other ranges, one in particular that's actually helping consult with me, where the construction of the range is a bit more advanced than standard ranges, where it will actually be a concrete building, aka the shooting range, built inside of another concrete building, which would be the actual structure. So based on the construction that has happened at other ranges using that same technology, there is zero sound from the outside of the building. So little that it would barely register on whatever the devices are that record sound, audiometer, I think is what it's called. But yeah, it will be soundproof. There will be very little, if any, sound mitigation from outside the building, be it from the parking lot next door to the street itself.
Are there any state regulations on this sound meter and how loud it can be? And
there's no measurable regulation. State regulation, typically there are none, but there are federal regulations that has to be made. Quite honestly, I owned an indoor shooting range in Woodbridge, Virginia for about 3 years. That was actually in a shopping center, so there were buildings literally adjacent, connected to the shopping center. And after the improvements that I made to the range, there were zero complaints, and it was within sound regulations. And there were, dare I say, that it was nowhere near as advanced as the range that I will be building from the ground up. This actually started life as a movie theater and was converted to a shooting range. So the sound mitigation was not exactly state-of-the-art.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you looked at renovating a building or the property rather than building a building?
Yes, ma'am, I have. Actually, Neil Morris has been helping me up quite a bit, looking for the right building. Here's the problem with renovating an older building, and trust me, it has definitely been an option for me. The way the ranges are built these days, especially the more advanced ones, the one I'll be building, is the target carriers, which are the contraptions that hold the targets and run the targets back and forth. They're a self-contained unit. They're operated wirelessly, unlike the old style that had a wire. And they run on a steel girder. And the steel girder is 25 yards, a 75-foot long girder. These are actually lowered into the building via crane. So it becomes very, very difficult to retrofit and do it correctly, a shooting range within a building. Can it be done? Yes, but I fear that doing it that way, retrofitting a range into an existing building does not give me the quality range that I'm looking for. I'm shooting for as little amount of sound as possible. Now, is it possible to build that shooting range inside of a building? Yes, it is, but the expenses that would be incurred to have to take a roof off and to rebuild a roof, it actually is less expensive to build from scratch. But that's not to say that if a building were to come available that would be ideal and would work, I would certainly contemplate doing it. But I know for a fact that if it's built from scratch, exactly with my specs, the way I want it, then it would be a better building for sure. Safer, less sound mitigation to deal with. I would much rather have a building ready to go, to be completely frank, but I want it done right.
Well, my concern is with all the real estate in Danville, that yet another building that's going up when there's so many vacant buildings.
I can understand that. And trust me, I have been encouraged by others in the city to go that route, simply because I would probably get more financial assistance. I'd probably get more assistance from the city. And I don't want to sacrifice safety, and I don't want to sacrifice the quality of the business just so I can get a cheaper rate on the building, or put it somewhere where people would like to see it. I mean, this is, as you all know, firearms are a very polarizing issue. Either people are for them or against them, and I'm not trying to sway them either way. But I want to ensure that I give the people of Danville and the people of the surrounding areas who may own a firearm or want to learn more about a firearm the safest building possible to learn how to use it or to improve their skills with the firearm. And if the second I start to look at cheaper options or easier options, it's not something that sets well with me. I want it to be, if this is something I'm going to do, if this is something I'm going to spend millions of dollars on, probably of someone else's money, unfortunately, I want it to be done right. I don't want to skip any corners. But again, like I said, if there's something that comes available or something that came available that would be of use, something I can retrofit and make effective and serve the purpose that I think it needs to serve, then it's not completely out the door. But so far I've been looking and I can't find anything.
The lay of the land there is Riverside, a hill.
Yes, sir.
Then Riverside Nursing Home.
Yes, sir.
And then another hill, and then you go up to Apollo Drive. And
yes.
Is this facility going to be built kind of into that hill there?
Well, if you look at it from the road, especially if you look at it from Riverside Drive, it does appear to be a straight uphill, but there's actually a flat spot there. And the way the lot is actually laid out, where the sewage line runs through, to the left of that sewage line is where I would be building. And in that area, there is I think we measured a 68-foot flat space on the east part of that building site, and all the way to the back, there's a flat spot of about 100 feet. And the building dimensions will probably only need to be 60 to 62 feet from the external. So it is a very long, narrow lot, but again, this lends itself to the belief that I think this lot was meant for this. I'm not a bowling alley expert, so I don't know anything about building a bowling alley, although it would be pretty well suited for that as well, by the shape of the lot. But I know about this, and I don't know. I feel like the lot is laid out for this business.
Can you give us just a little bit of a idea of what the external from Riverside is going to look like? I mean, we've got a number of different types of facilities going up and down Riverside. Can you give us kind of a snapshot of like materials and what that's going to appear from the street?
Most likely, it will be of an industrial look. Obviously, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of windows in a shoot. Although that's not to say that there won't be. The front of the store, or from this perspective, the front from the parking lot, there will be windows there. And actually, I think I sent a blueprint to you all as well that kind of lays out where the windows would be. But from the external, I would probably be planning on an industrial look, maybe a stucco appearance, something that doesn't look. I don't want it to look too warehousey, but I don't want it to look too fabricated either. What I would love to see is some sort of stucco type finish with a concrete innards, obviously. The walls themselves will be filled concrete, and the walls around the range will be another wall of concrete. So the ranges around the walls around the range will be almost 4 feet thick. But I don't want to give that appearance of a vault or something that looks archaic. It's going to look as aesthetically pleasing as I can afford. But my goal, actually, there's a range in Gainesville that I'm modeling this after, and the general manager and owner of that range is helping to consult with me as far as construction, trying to use the same contractors that he uses, because, as I mentioned, the air handling is a big expense and very, very closely monitored part of that structure. And if a certain contractor who has done these before and they know what they're doing and they've had experience in laying the foundation of a correctly ventilated range, then it makes it easier on me to have to deal with the EPA, because obviously the EPA, what they're concerned with is what the air is coming out of the building. They want to know what the air quality is coming out, and obviously that's when HEPA filters get involved, and it's complicated, but it's actually, to a certain degree, it's pretty simple from their terms. So that's my intent for that, and obviously for the perspective of the uneducated or the people who don't know what a shooting range is, the biggest concern obviously is always the sound and whether or not a round will leave the building. The way this range will be constructed, it would be impossible for a round to leave the building. You could literally walk out onto the range and point the firearm straight up in the air and shoot, and it would not leave. There'll be ceiling ballasts, which are basically pieces of metal that hang from the ceiling, and they're angled like so. So if a round goes up, it actually hits the metal and ricochets back down into the berm. The backstop will most likely be a granulated rubber trap, it was new technology when I put it into my old shooting range in Woodbridge, Virginia, but it's super quiet. Typically, the old ranges it was a piece of steel, an angled steel at the bottom and an angled steel at the top. So when the round hit the backstop, the round would basically splatter or deform and go into the trap. Well, that creates lead dust, and lead dust obviously creates an OSHA issue. Where the granulated rubber trap, there is no impact. It simply goes into the rubber. Believe it or not, a high-powered rifle round only goes about that far into a granulated rubber trap, and I have 10 feet of granulated rubber. So a 50 caliber rifle could be actually shot in those ranges without damaging or leaving the backstop. That's not to say that anyone can come shoot a 50 caliber rifle on an indoor range. That won't be allowed, but it can sustain that. So I want to make sure that the city council and the planning commission and everyone understands I'm not just a guy that, hey, I got a great idea, let's build an indoor range. I've been down this road. This is what I've done for a living for 20 years. So I do bring a bit of experience to the playing field. I did it for the government for 8 of the 10 years I was a Capitol Police officer. I consulted on 2 very large ranges. One in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one in in Ashburn, Virginia. So this is something I have experience in, and I can personally guarantee that if this happens, and if this is something that I can move forward on, it will be the nicest indoor shooting range on the East Coast. Yes.
I have a question. It might be for Mr. Strader, it might be for staff too, I'm not sure, but are you aware of any federal regulations that would limit, like, the number of feet this could be, or any indoor range could be from a school, or from residents, or from nursing homes? Are there federal laws that set that? or
There is a
that-
federal law, it's called the, I think the statute, the federal regulation is 922.f, but it establishes a safety zone around schools, around 1,000 feet within a school. It's a federal law, it's not new, it's been around for a while, and it restricts the carry of a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school. With that said, there are certain restrictions, such as permits, licensed concealed carry for permit holders, that kind of thing, law enforcement officers, off-duty law enforcement officers. Actually, I spoke with the ATF yesterday about this, and what would happen for them. And obviously, honestly, it was not regulated by them, but it was something that I will do to ensure that I am not breaking any codes or violations. But outside of the building, on either side of the door, there will be a reference to that code saying that any firearms entering or exiting the building would be required to be unloaded in a locked container per federal regulation 922.f, and it will be posted on the building. And actually, I had a friend who opened up a gun store in Texas. He actually retrofitted a post office building, and it was 250 feet from a school. And he had the same issues with the school zone, but with the signs enacted, the ATF had no issues. But that's the only regulation. As far as shooting range, if I wanted to build a shooting range and not have an FFL or not have a federal firearms license to sell firearms or to rent them, then there would be no issues. But it sort of contradicts the point to have a shooting range and not have the ability to at least rent firearms, because this is going to be more than just a place to go shoot. This is actually going to be a facility where if someone who's new to shooting or someone who's kind of on the fence, maybe not pro-gun or anti-gun, but they just don't know, there'll actually be a counter, just like in my old shop, where there's a huge counter with any kind of firearm you can imagine, and someone can literally go in, take a destructor out there on the firing line with them, and take a firearm and shoot it and see, and to literally test drive it. And not only are we educating the public, but we're also making the gun owners that are currently carrying firearms more responsible, more educated. And that's the only thing I'm trying to do. I'm never going to sway whether someone is pro or anti-gun. That's not what I'm here for.
So if the gun is unloaded, you would be okay under that federal law to be
Yes,
within
sir.
1,000 feet?
Well, yes, I would be covered under 5 mandated. Hey, this is now I can't put a metal detector up in front of my building and make sure it's still up to the person to see that notice and to abide by the law. But it covers me from a business standpoint if I post that. Now, is it required? No, it's not actually even required to be on the building, but for me, it's safer to do that.
Right. Should we require that, staff, or would that be a good condition to have in there?
I think he's just got to follow federal law, so I don't think it's necessarily zoning administrator differs. I don't think it's something that you should place as a condition on the special use permit, because he's got to follow the law.
Right, and if I can interject, I'm sorry, but even if we did, it can't counteract the federal mandate. So it would still fall under, it would be an administrative act only. It would still fall under the federal guidelines.
And they're none, the schools are 1,000 feet. How about nursing home, assisted living? None?
No, sir.
None there?
No rates.
Residential properties?
Well, once it gets to that point, it's a zoning issue. But as long as the property is zoned commercial, then there are no regulations as far as the distance between a residence or a residential section.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you live here, or?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I grew up here. I was a police officer here in the city for a few years before I went to Washington, D.C. I was a police officer there for 10 years, and then I was a firearms instructor for a while. I was a pro tips instructor on the Outdoor Channel for a while. My background, as I said, has been in firearms my whole life. But yeah, and I recently just moved back with my family to the city where I'm from. So my family's actually from here.
So you will be staffing this facility rather than just building it and moving on?
Yes, ma'am. I will be staffing it, and if everything goes well, I'll be managing it as well.
What do you anticipate your hours of operation?
That's a great question. I will most likely open, my last hours of operation changed quite a bit. I started, when I bought my original business, we were open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I did an analysis of the business that we had, and I changed the hours. Just because typically people don't come to a shooting range quite that often. They wait till they get off of work or that kind of thing. So I changed the hours. So for me, it's a numbers game. I have to know that I can, for me to pay back the range or to pay back my investors, I have to get people in at a certain time and use the facilities that I have. So it would most likely be a 2 to 8, 1 to 8 kind of thing. And on the weekend, it would be an all day, and Sunday, 1 to 6, something like that. It would totally depend on the hours of use, most hours of use. Now, I will say that if an agreement is made with local law enforcement, they would be granted keyed access, off-hour access via key card or remote entry. That's what I had in my old place. We opened as early as 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would stay on off hours. We would let law enforcement qualify. I had an air marshal contract. I had an ATF contract. I had numerous law enforcement contracts with my old business, and I would be willing to let the law enforcement agencies in this area use the range as well for day-to-day qualification and some training if need be, when weather permitted, obviously. They have Danville, and there are outdoor shooting ranges available, but there are some times where an administrative qualification is not necessary to pick someone up and drive them out to the range and do that when they can do it right here in the city.
One more question. In Woodbridge or some of these other shooting ranges that you have access to, is there any situation when there's anyone under 18 using them?
No, sir. The only time anyone under 18 can access a firing range is if they're with someone who's over the age of 21.
So the answer to the question
Well, the answer to the question is yes, it could happen, but not unassisted, not independently. Typically, if you're under 21 years old, you're not allowed to step inside a shooting range or a gun store without adult supervision.
But if you step in with someone who is an adult, is that person under 18 allowed to shoot?
Yes, absolutely.
You have a number of people, we receive responses. Many were not opposed to this. There were 4 that were. What do you say to those who have offered concerns about your business being in that area?
I would encourage people who are against it to understand that this is a shooting range and a training facility first and a gun store second. In light of recent events, not only in Danville but in our country, we're seeing more and more and more concealed carry permit holders throughout the country. And as you can imagine, I am pro concealed carry, pro Second Amendment, pro gun. It's my life. It's my life's blood, and it's what I've done my entire life. However, I am firmly under the belief that if you go through the trouble of getting a concealed carry permit, that the class that you take to get it is not enough. And I would encourage the people who are against that to tell them that this is not just a gun store. This is not just a retail establishment. This is a place where people who own a firearm, who have gotten their concealed carry permit, have a place to come and be more responsible. I would rather see 10 responsible, trained concealed carry holders in an establishment than I would see 50 who just have a firearm on them and have no training how to use it. That becomes a more of a danger than it does conversely. So I would encourage people who are against it to accept it for what it is. I would never try to turn them into a pro-gun person, because that's not what I do. I'm not on Capitol Hill anymore, and that's not what I get paid to do. But I would encourage the people of the city to embrace the fact that whether this range is built or not, people will continue to buy firearms, people will continue to get concealed carry permits, and if we don't give them a place to train, a place to learn how to properly use them, then we're going to have a lot of uneducated concealed carry holders out there who are not properly trained, in my opinion, to carry them.
In order to obtain a Virginia concealed carrier permit, is it a requirement that you have X amount of hours of?
No, ma'am. The only requirement is a class from an NRA certified instructor. I can teach you a class called Machine Gunning 101. As long as my NRA certified instructor number is on that certificate, you can get a concealed carry permit. When I used to teach concealed carry classes, that is one of the issues I have with the state and how it's issued its concealed carry permits. And this is a strange argument for a pro-gun person to have, but I am concerned that the state doesn't train its concealed carry permit holders enough. My concealed carry class, when I used to teach for my personal academy and when I used to go out and train all around the world, especially obviously concealed carry in the US, my class was 8 hours. 8 hours and required to fire 100 rounds. And out of 10 people that would take my class, an average of 4 to 5 would get their concealed carry permit because the other 5 realized I'm not ready. So that's the kind of classes I'll be teaching at this place if it's put on the map. I take this very seriously, and I want to have a very serious place for people to come learn how to shoot. And that's what I would say to any people in the city or any people around the city that would be against this. I'd be concerned for that. Yes, sir.
Another question. Will you or your staff be checking for up-to-date current permits when somebody walks in with a gun?
No, sir. Once someone walks in to an establishment, that's not something I can legally do. I can't, if someone walks in, I can't actually, if someone walks in with a concealed carry permit, I can't demand to see their concealed carry license. Now, as a business owner, I can make a requirement that no concealed carry firearms are allowed in my establishment, but again, how am I going to enforce that without metal detectors?
So you're saying that if somebody breaks into his house and steals his firearm, Joe Thug, and then wants to practice with it, he can walk into your range with that stolen firearm and just practice away?
Theoretically, yes. But that's how it is. I mean, I don't know how me as a business owner would stop that. I'm not endorsing illegally obtained firearms to come shoot in the range, but for me, I'm not in law enforcement anymore. I can't gauge which one is stolen, or which ones are stolen, or which ones may not be. Now, I will say, at my old facility, we were very proactive in the people that used our range, the people that used our store. We were cognizant of the people that came in and asked strange questions or the wrong questions, and we acted on it. I can't say a lot more than that for reasons that I can't explain here, but we were very proactive at my old establishment. We were in Washington, D.C. area, so we had to be, but it would be no different here. Obviously, the people that would be working for me would be trained by me to how to see something like that, find out, if someone comes in into a range and comes in to use our range and their firearm has a scratched off serial number, obviously that would be a key indicator that something's wrong and then we'll need to.
One other thing you can probably answer, seeing as how you have law enforcement background. If a police officer shows up at the range, can they ask to see a person's permit?
Not in private property, no, sir. At that point, once they walk into the range, it's private property. All I can do is ask them to leave if I didn't feel comfortable with them having a concealed carry permit.
Okay.
So will you be checking everyone's gun to see if, for example, the serial number is scratched out?
No, ma'am.
So you
Nor would any indoor shooting range.
So anybody can just walk in, hey, this is my gun, and
in indoor shooting ranges, customers are welcome to come in, rent a range, and use our facility. Now, with that said, as you can see from the blueprints here, there's actually an observation room that will be ballistic glass from the store side and visual, the standard glass from the observation. So I will have certified range officers observing the line to see if any safety rules are violated. I mean, there are very significant, stringent safety rules at any indoor shooting range, and actually that's why I set up an observation room, so I could ensure that the people using the range just weren't walking to a closed room and doing whatever they wanted. So will I be checking every single gun that walks into the store? Absolutely not. But will I be able to observe any unsafe or suspicious acts while people are on the range or shooting? Absolutely. Yes, I will. In fact, the manager's office, if you notice, has windows on both sides to be able to see out in the store.
Mr. Vice Chairman, we're beginning to get out of the purview of the commission's ability to make a determination on this, so we need to be very careful.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's keep it focused, guys. Keep it focused. Are there any more questions, Mr. Strader? Okay. Thank you. There may be some other questions in a minute. Anybody else want to speak to this?
Thank you very much.
Anybody else want to speak from the public related to this? For, against? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing. And do you guys have any questions for staff or related to this item?
Just, and you may not know, but does anyone know the school board obviously voted that in opposition to this, but were they against gun ranges in general for the whole city or just in this location? Does anybody know? Since no one is here from the school board, do we know that?
I do not know, was not notified, and didn't know the school board was opposed until I received the notice itself. You have the same notice that I have, so I cannot say any more on why.
Okay. So nobody knows why.
I can't answer that. I was at the meeting. There was no discussion on why or anything that way.
Could you step up to the mic and state, thank you?
Yeah.
If you're answering a question, you're not press anymore, you're now.
Bruce Hedrick, SouthsideCentral.com. I was at the meeting. Cheryl Bryant made the motion to be opposed. Sharon Jones agreed with that, and no discussion was made on any specific reason. And I did put that in my report for you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions to staff? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion. I'll recommend approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000041 as submitted.
I'll second.
And call the roll, please.
Mr. Dotson, you seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Abstain. Okay, that'll be forwarded on to the City Council for their meeting. The next item on the agenda is a special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000047, filed by Vaughn Wellington, requesting a special use permit for the operation of a car wash in accordance with Article 3K, Section C, Item 28 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, as amended at 136 South Ridge Street. The applicant is proposing to operate an indoor car wash at this location. If we could have a staff report, please.
The applicant, Vaughn Wellington, is seeking a special use permit for the operation of an indoor car wash at 136 South Ridge Street. The applicant is proposing to give hand-detailed car washes on the basement floor of this location. The subject property is approximately .32 acres and is zoned CBCC, conditional, central business commercial. It's the former site of Dixie Bags and is currently operating as the River District Barbershop, and was approved by the Planning Commission to operate as an indoor commercial recreation facility in February of this year. City Council will hear this case on March 1st, and staff will give an update on council action at that meeting. The subject property is located within the River District and is therefore subject to the River District Design Guidelines and is an approval by the River District Commission. Section 4.2 of the River District Design Guidelines, entitled Allowed Uses, states that auto-related businesses are discouraged in the River District. The applicant proffered conditions upon himself that all car washing and detailing will be done indoors, shielded from public view. 21 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. Based on the adopted River District Design Guidelines, staff believes that a car wash at 136 South Ridge Street does not conform to the development vision outlined in the guidelines. Staff recommends that Planning Commission remand this item to the River District Design Commission to review and make a recommendation to the Planning Commission on whether support should be granted. Planning Commission will need to table the special use permit application PLSUP 2016-00000047 filed by Von Wellington until such time that the River District Commission can discuss the case and make a recommendation on whether they believe an indoor car wash is an appropriate business in the River District.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing on this item. If there's anyone wishing to come and speak at this time.
Just trying to see if I got a special use permit to be able to wash cars. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you already operating, washing cars at this facility?
Yes.
Okay, that's all sign.
Okay, did something happen that make it, you find out that you needed to come to here?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
What?
We had a conversation.
Just kidding, yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to say, you've done a lot of development around this property area and are putting a lot of effort into that. And I think it's really commendable, the work you're doing there. This group was really instrumental in helping create the River District guidelines and being a part of that. And, we never could figure out all the little details of everything that might appear on that. So understand the passing back to the River District Commission is really probably the smartest thing to do, and is not in any way, I think, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, is not reflective of any opposition to this at this stage. It's just that group needs to look at this and review this. So if we vote to table it and send it to that way, that's what I think is the meaning of that.
Right. That's good. Well put. Any other questions from the commissioners for the applicant? Because you are washing inside. Everything's done inside the building, so it's not outdoors.
No.
So the public actually doesn't really see it. Is that correct?
This is more specialty detailing. I mean, you're not going to have a line of cars down the road.
No.
People will come in, probably you'll spend 3 or 4 hours on one car.
We
type.
spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours on the car.
Right.
What are your hours of operation?
7 to 7.
7 to 7.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item?
Hello, my name is Andrew Cousins. I'm treasurer for the House of Hope on Ridge Street, homeless shelter here in Danville. We just wanted to publicly state we had a few reservations about a car wash being in the area. Historically, a lot of car washes you do see maybe some unsavory activity occurring, especially indoors, behind closed doors within. We were just more concerned about with a homeless shelter being there and these people going out during the day, an area right next door where loitering or drug activity may occur behind closed doors. So we just wanted to state our opinion on that.
Do you have some legitimate concern other than just opinion that these things will be taking place in that particular place?
Absolutely not, and no disrespect to the business owner. This is only opinion. We just don't agree with this being in that area.
Yeah, a little ironic because there were some similar concerns in the neighborhood about you all.
We understand, yes. we feel at the House of Hope we've tried very hard over the last few years to establish an organization that is well respected in the community. Do not feel that we've caused any problems, and we want to maintain that reputation.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. Our church is actually a supporter of your organization, but yeah, just want to make sure we're careful about assumption.
I understand.
Okay. Any other questions for this? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Did you have something else? Yeah, did you? Come on up.
get up there and the figures now.
Following up on his statement about what we do there next door, we wash cars, and everyone knows me in this city. We even offer the homeless people from your shelter jobs. The first, I guess the first day we opened up, and we had guys who were coming to work, some of the guys that live in the shelter, and of course they didn't stand up to their agreement to work, whether they came from Danville or Lynchburg. And that's part of our motto, is to give everyone here a chance. That's why I opened up the businesses. And since we're downtown, we decided to put it there because we're more focused on Main Street in that area of the River District. But what about the area that we're in now, right across from the free clinic and the shelter? So you do house a lot of those type of people. So yeah, you talk to the owner. No, we pretty much straight up, and we're enforcing the Danville pride of, reimagining and making it happen. So
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else? Okay, close the public hearing, and,
Question to staff.
yes, go ahead.
If we table this, does he have to close down until River District decides?
No, because once he applied for the special use permit to change the code, he also asked for the code change. That stops us from taking further enforcement action, because if the River District and Planning Commission and City Council agree that it's a use that's allowed and issue the special use permit, he would be legal. At this point, it's kind of a gray area, but I cannot shut him down. We did tell him he needed to get the facility checked out by our building inspections department. They have been there to look at the place. He has the necessary sand separator. He's placed a backflow preventer on the water system. So at this point, he doesn't have the legal right to operate, but he's also not truly illegal at this. So he's kind of just out there until this is all resolved.
Okay.
So if we do send this to, he can still operate?
Yes, I won't cite him for violation, is what I will say. Should he be operating? That's questionable,
area.
but I will not pursue any violations until such time as this is decided one way or another.
And rather than tabling it, what you're doing is remanding this back
Right.
to the River District Commission so that it then can come back to you. So don't table, if you table it, we don't want to do that.
Okay.
It's a number one on your
Right.
item there. Okay. Any other questions? You want to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion, recommend remanding this item to the River District Design Commission for review and recommendation. Is that enough?
At their next meeting, similar to what you did for the,
Yes,
Code
within
amendment.
the, within 1 month.
correct.
Second.
Second. And have a roll call, please.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Miss Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes. Okay, next item is a special use permit application, PLSUP 2016-000048, filed by North Main Baptist Church, requesting a special use permit for the operation of urban agriculture in accordance with Article 3J, Section C, item number 20 of the Code of the City of Danville, as amended, for parcel ID number 54691. And the applicant is proposing to operate a community garden at this location. If we could have a staff report, please.
The applicant, North Main Baptist Church, is requesting a special use permit for the operation of an urban agriculture operation. The applicant is proposing to operate a community garden at this location. The subject property is a .99 acre parcel on the northeast corner of North Main Street and Franklin Turnpike. It's zoned NC Neighborhood Commercial and is located across Norwood Court from North Main Baptist Church. The subject parcel is currently vacant, so the church plans to operate a community garden for North Main congregation members and other members of the community to grow their own food. The gardens will include seasonal fruits and vegetables. The zoning code limits urban agriculture operations to no more than one form of livestock animal or 5 poultry per every 3 acres. 18 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. A complete report is in front of you. Staff believes that the community garden will not adversely affect surrounding property owners. Staff recommends approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000048, filed by North Main Baptist Church to to run an urban agriculture operation on parcel ID number 54691 with the following conditions. Any and all accessory structures meet the zoning setbacks and receive a zoning clearance. All livestock or poultry being raised on the subject property adhere to the limits detailed in the definition of urban agriculture in the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the public hearing now. For those who wish to come to speak on this item, please do so.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the City Planning Commission. My name is Fred Unger. I'm the pastor at North Main Baptist Church, and as you heard, we're applying for a special use permit to begin to provide food for our neighboring community, as well as the purpose of engaging our community. This all started last year when we were already doing a garden, and the article in the paper came out about Grace in Maine. And I read that article, and it said we needed a special use permit. And I contacted our folks and said, do you know we need a special use permit? And they said, no. And I said, I think we do. So we want to make this right. We want to do it right. Last year we were able to grow over 2,500 pounds of potatoes. And through 125 members of our church, we were able to bag them in 5-pound bags, clean them first, of course, and we were able to engage 300 homes in our community. And with the leftover potatoes, we were able to take down to God's storehouse to help out.
Okay, all right. Any questions for commissioners for the applicant?
Go ahead.
What, you probably don't have any livestock or chicken or just
No.
vegetables?
No.
Any other questions?
That was it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Chickens.
No chickens.
Thank you.
No
Anyone else wish to speak?
That's good.
Cows.
Okay, being that, I'll close the public hearing. No chickens, okay. You got any motions?
Okay, I'll recommend approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016-000048 as submitted. Well,
With conditions?
conditions by staff.
Right, okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second. We can have a roll, please?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is a special use permit, PLSUP 2016-000049, filed by Madison Square Incorporated, requesting a special use permit for a waiver of yard requirements in accordance with Article 3N, Section C, item number 21 of the Code of the City of Danville, as amended, on parcel ID number 73038. The applicant is proposing to divide the parcel into two parcels, each of which would have less than the 200 feet of street frontage required. We could have a staff report.
The applicant, Madison Square, Inc., is seeking a special use permit for a waiver of yard requirements on parcel ID number 73038. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the property into two parcels, each of which would have less than the 200 feet of street frontage required. The subject property is zoned PSC, Planned Shopping Center, and is 56.19 acres. It is ingress and egress on Deer Run Road, Pineview Drive, and Churchview Road. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel into two parcels. The northern parcel would be approximately 17.9 acres, and the southern parcel would be approximately 44.4 acres. After the subdivision, the northern parcel would have an approximate street frontage of 70 feet, and the southern parcel would have an approximate street frontage of 155 feet. The subject parcel is intended for future commercial development. At such time, Pineview Drive is planned to be extended, which will bring the proposed southern parcel into compliance with the zoning code. Presently, the subject parcel is vacant, and staff knows of no specific plans for development. 37 notices were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and a complete report is in front of you. Staff is concerned that the commercial development will increase traffic congestions on Piney Forest Road if road access remains limited. Prior to development, the applicant will be required to provide detailed plans regarding the use of each parcel, including traffic mitigation strategies. The proposed subdivision will not impact the road access until such time as development occurs. Staff recommends approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016 00000049, filed by Madison Square, Inc. for a waiver of yard requirements of parcel ID number 73038.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the public hearing for anyone wishing to come and speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, Madison Whittle, and I'm here to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Okay. Anybody got any questions?
I have a question. Do you have any idea when you plan to develop this property?
As soon as the market picks up enough, or I thought they had a 2040 land use that may pick it up in the future, but not right off the bat.
And what are your plans to put on it? Do you know?
Yeah.
What are your plans to put on this property?
I'm going to sell part of it, and I don't have any plans for the other part of it yet.
What is the advantage of doing this division without knowing what your development plans are? We're asking for this now.
I've got somebody that's interested in buying it.
Okay.
They go by part of it, I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it's just the part that's...
So you're just dividing it up?
The larger parcel or the smaller?
The one that we're, I think it was 17 acres.
17 acres,
Yes.
okay.
That's off of Deer Run, right?
That's correct.
Any other questions?
Do you know what their plans are?
I know that they have done some developing, but I don't know what they're going to do. It would be under planned shopping center, or they would have to change any zoning if they did that, but that's all I know.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Lewis, and I live on Pine View Drive.
I'm sorry, step on up and say your name.
I said, my name's Steve Lewis, and I live on Pine View Drive.
Okay.
It is a narrow street. It is a dead end, and we need to try and keep it that way. I mean, the children that play on the street, in fact, if anything, I'd like to have speed bumps put down the road to slow traffic down as it is. I know they was talking about an ingress or egress from the property to Pine View, which would end up connecting to either Deer Run or Churchview, I would imagine, and that's, that's part of what I think most of us were opposing, was because of the fact that we don't need anything else to make a two-way street there. Because as it is right now, it's basically just a residential street, and it's not a very wide street as it is.
All right. I understand. I don't think this has anything to do with any work being done on that Pine View right now, does it?
Well, it had it listed as far as for the ingress or egress on Pine View Drive.
Right. He's just taking the tract of land and cutting it in half, and I think the tract he's interested in selling, I think, is on the Deer Run part. I don't think anything will be done with that part. Is that?
The property has three frontages. One's on Deer Run, Pine View, and Churchview. They're looking at cutting a part of it off that's on Deer Run. That just leaves Pine View and Churchview as they are existing. It won't change anything. They're not proposing any expansions or any road work or anything there. They're only looking to do something on the Deer Run side of it. It's just because the property is that big, as you can see from the map on the screen, that we notified everyone who's within 300 feet of the entire tract. All the work is at Deer Run end.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
But just for clarity on that, because the concern of the neighbors there is that if an action we take today actually sets in motion that later the Pine View, if it were to be developed, could be extended. I mean, are we clearing the way, with City Council's approval, clearing the way for that?
Change that. I don't think it'll change that either way.
The case that's in front of you doesn't impact that. They could come today without this case and ask to extend Pine View and build something down there, and we'd look at that as an individual case.
Okay.
What they're asking for now is to subdivide the property, and by subdividing it, none of the frontages are sufficient according to the way the current code is, and that's why they're asking for the special use permit for that waiver. It doesn't impact how it is and what the future is for those other two streets. If they do something that's in compliance with the regulations, we would have to look at that. We will look at traffic impact and anything else that goes on, But today's case won't change that fact.
And that would be true for Deer Run Road too. If it's being sold and somebody develops it, they still have to come back for,
They may have to come back, maybe be handled internally for the traffic. They'll have to do an impact study to see what impact it would have at the intersection of Deer Run and Piney Forest Road to see if it meets the warrants for a stoplight. We've looked at Deer Run and Piney Forest through multiple studies of Piney Forest Road. It hadn't yet met the thresholds to need any improvements, but if they build something back here, depending on the amount of volume that's generated, at that point it may, and then we would work with who's ever developing that property to address that. The special use permit to allow for changes in frontage has no impact on that part of it.
okay.
Question for staff. Is there anything that they could use or do with the property once, if they split, that they don't have to come back to us?
Yes. I mean,
Could
anything
you
that's
give me some
permitted.
examples?
They could possibly build another office building down there, which is allowed within the current zoning. That wouldn't come back to you because that would be a use permitted by right. We would still look at it for traffic impact, utility impacts, and other things. Those impacts are handled internally through engineering, planning, public works. That wouldn't come back to you, but we would look at, what impacts it would have on the streets in Piney Forest and whether, again, lights would be necessary, under utility improvements, things like that. If they would come in today and ask to build a building down there without subdividing, just put one piece on that giant tract, this case wouldn't be in front of us. We'd look at it the same way. All they're asking to do is cut a part of it off and leave the remainder, and because of that subdivision, that's why it has to come to you.
I understand.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to come?
I'm Arthur Nichols, and my wife Dolores. We live at 146 Pineview Drive. And here a few years ago, they wanted to connect Deer Run with Pineview Drive. And we have a traffic light at the end of Pineview Drive. And if all of those businesses from Deer Run was to come up, we don't have much room on Pineview to where, with cars on both sides of the street, where we have that traffic. We don't mind what he does with the property on the other side, as long as all the traffic goes to the Deer Run side and does not affect Pineview.
Right.
And it does, and we're thinking in the future, if he does develop that property, that he has an easement to where he connects Pineview as well as Churchview. And if you're going to make a motion to this, we would rather you make a motion to where he cannot make egress onto Pineview Drive. Because like I said, if that was the case, everybody, in the afternoons and all, there's no traffic light at Deer Run. Everybody would be running up the street. And we have people running up and down the street enough as a dead-end street.
Right. Okay.
And if you make the motion, I would appreciate it if you made it to where they could not egress on the Pineview Drive. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any like staff response? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out too. Is there any staff response to the neighbors' concerns?
Yes, there's staff response to neighbors' concerns. You cannot tell someone they cannot have access to a public street. So, the property fronts on that public street, he's afforded the same access as anyone else to that public street. What staff's response would be is if anyone goes to develop the property, that's where internally we review it. There are certain code requirements that you have to meet based on the number of vehicles that are generated and everything else. So anyone that would develop on there, we would handle based on city code. It's not something that necessarily will come back to the Planning Commission, but internally, yes, it will be handled. You can't make a motion saying, we'll approve this, but you can't have access to public street, because it is, public street available to anyone. So the only way that we can handle the neighbor's concerns is just the code itself already addresses that. If someone goes to develop, we will look at it, we will see if it meets the warrants and everything else for, any widening that would be necessary, additional stoplights, turn lanes, the same as we do for any other project.
Okay. Did you want to say something else?
Deer Run Road is actually going to have an easement through that.
Deer Run Road is going
Deer Run Road is going to have an easement right through the part that we're cutting.
Right. So you're not having any impact on Pineview at all?
Right, we're not going to.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. Thank you.
So you're not just cutting off that northern end of it. You're actually selling part of what's on the northwest section of it, so that you could still run Deerwood Drive down into it.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll have everything below it, and I'll still need the road extended right down there. And
yeah, you could go in right now and connect the road between Pineview and Churchview, and there's nothing that we could do about it. Am I correct?
We would have,
they would probably.
the city would look at it. We could require 2 separate cul-de-sacs to not allow a loop road and other things. If he would come in and say, I want to build a house on that piece of property at the end of Pineview, I'd have to give him a permit for it because it has frontage on a street.
Sure.
So as long as what he's doing is in compliance with the code, we cannot say, no, you can't do it. If he requests the extension of Deer Run, then any dedications would come back to Planning Commission. So, if Deer Run, and he wants to cut Deer Run off and maybe make a parcel on one side of Deer Run and a parcel on the lower side of Deer Run in the future, that would come back to you. Just as it is right now, to cut it off and leave it as it is, that's why we're here.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Did you have something to say, ma'am?
My name is Marion Lewis, and I live on Pineview Drive. My question is, if he sells the half of the property that accesses Deer Run, will he only have access to his property through Pineview Drive and Churchview, and he has to come back to take our road and Churchview to access his other property?
I think that's what you were saying, right? That the line that you're going to sell, you're going to still have access from Deer Run onto the property that you're keeping.
It will still access. Deer Run will still be on his property.
That's what he's saying, yes.
Right. It would have been helpful if we had a map.
Yeah, if the line had been drawn on the map, it would have been helpful.
Because, we panicked about it. When people park on either side of our street, only one car goes up or down.
I know, I drove it.
You pull over and you have to let them come up. And we have small children on our street, and I have little cats that like to run up and cross the street. And so we worry about the small children getting in the street, because we have, I believe, 5 children under the age of 5 on our street that could possibly end up in that street with fast-moving vehicles, and people with through traffic that we don't know could have access to our small children that's out in the yard that might be not in our yard when we get home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Shanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Fred Shanks. I'm representing Madison Whittle, or Madison Incorporated, on this project. Just to make sure that everyone has a clear picture, absent a survey at this time, the 17 acres is going to be at the end of Deer Run Road. Reserved through the 17 acres will be an easement and a reverter clause that when Madison or Madison Inc. develops the property to the south, to the west of the 17 acres, the road can be extended at that time. So the whole thing is Madison has a buyer now that's interested in the 17 acres. He will retain a reverter and an easement, a reverter clause and easement to extend the road at such time as when he develops that other piece. Whenever that happens, it has to come back to the Planning Commission and City Council. And I apologize that we don't have a survey. We're in the middle of doing that for him.
Any questions, Mr. Shanks?
And that's a permanent easement that will transfer if he were to sell it, it would still be there?
It's a permanent easement that would run with the land until a road is built, and then the reverter clause would take effect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, close the public hearing. Questions or motions? Go ahead.
Motion, I move we recommend approval of special use permit application PLSUP 2016 000049 as submitted.
Okay, do we have a second? Have a second? And you can call the roll, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Davis? Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Okay, next item is the approval of the minutes of February meeting. Any additions, changes, or corrections? Not any. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion they be approved.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they carried. Other business?
The one item that you had for last month was approved by City Council, and that's all staff has at the moment.
Do we have anything for next month?
Yes, we do.
Is it a whole bunch of things like this?
No, you have one item, and then I'll assume that the River District will have a chance to review the case and make a recommendation back to you. So you'll probably have the code amendment and Ridge Street request. You should have that back to you next month as well. I'm going to advertise it just in case.
They meet monthly?
They meet monthly. We do have items for them since you've remanded this, so they'll definitely have a meeting. I'll advertise it. Your agenda may be a day or two late just because of the timing of the meetings. So we'll do the best to get it back to you as quick as possible.
Okay, that being all, we stand adjourned.